Okay, I think we can start. And if you have any questions during the session, please feel free to write them in the chat and we'll make sure to address them at the end. And at this point, I let Veronica introduce the Glaut Research Program herself, so we can now start from this there.
Thank you, Ele. Thank you for the introduction, and thanks everyone for being here. I know time is always short for everyone, so it really means a lot that you're attending today's session. And we'll make sure you get away with as much information as possible and hopefully answering some of your questions as practitioners in the market research world. Yeah, as Elena was saying, our research and research program was born with one clear objective: building a framework of reference for AIMIs, AI moderated interviews. So today I will first quickly show you what an AIMI is, if somebody probably didn't know. But then I really want to jump into the experiments that these two partners did using Glaut to test AIMIs. And so at the very end, I would really like to discuss with you potential new research questions. What else would be interesting for you to work on to, get inspirations and potentially launch new collaborations with someone in the audience. So let's get started. I'll just open my big screen. All right. So the big question: how AI moderated interviews elevated data quality? That's a question that's at our core, and we really want to understand when and how this happened. First of all, what are AI moderated interviews? This is a screenshot of how they look like in Glaut. I will give you a very quick demo as live one. Basically, an AIMI, we call them in Glaut, is a questionnaire 2.0. That means that closed and open questions are moderated. That means they get follow-ups that are customized to the respondents' answers. Similarly to a survey, the interviews can be taken when and where the respondents want. The interaction, though, can happen via text or voice. So respondents can, speak in their microphone. The probing is customized to the respondents' answers. Within Glaut, we also have a data quality integrated system. So I would really like to show you how the structure of an AIMI, looks like. So I'll show this tab to you so you can see a real example from actually one of the projects that we are going to see later, that the project that was programmed for the experiment from Mannheim, from the University of Mannheim. I would really like you to focus on how, the moderation works so that you can better understand the comparison with the static world of interviews, right? This topic was about healthy choices. The researcher programmed some open questions, some closed questions, rating questions and such. Where does AI moderation come into play? Basically, prompting after the chosen question, the goals, the direction that you want the follow-ups to go. In this case, the first question was, which healthy habits do you personally keep up every week? And the goal with the probing was to figure out examples, anecdotes that illustrate the responses' viewpoints. We also tried to force follow-ups to a maximum number of 2 because of comparison reasons, which will be clear when I show you the design of the experiment. Now, just to remind the first question, so which healthy habits do you personally keep up every week? And the second one, which is when you choose a healthier option, what do you prioritize first? So let's see what a respondent sees when is taking an AIMI, an AI moderated interview. So I simply take, the interview URL, paste it in a new browser tab. I get welcomed, and then I start the interview, and I'm being prompted with the first question. Let's see. Which healthy habits do you personally keep up per week? So I try to work out 2-3 times a week. So that's the first follow-up I'm getting. Can you tell me more about what those workouts typically look like? So in my case, I try to do Pilates once a week and to swim twice a week. Sounds like a balanced routine. Besides exercise, are there any other healthy habits to keep up weekly, like around eating or sleep? Sleeping isn't great, but I try to eat Glaut. But I see. So now he's satisfied with my answer and he's starting with the second question. I'm not going to go through the entire question, but that's how you see that moderation happens. So it's really customized to my own answers. It's not the same for everyone. Respondents could give different answers and get different follow-up. What I'm going to show you now instead is part of that data quality system that ensures you get clean responses, right? So you end up with a full sample of clean response. Let's play the role of the respondent who is not willing to cooperate and just would like to, click through the questionnaire. So I'm just going to say, I don't know, blah, blah, like random stuff. No. Let's go on. As you see, the agent is stopping me now. So the interview was ended for quality reasons. So then when I go back to the program, to Glaut, and I inspect the data, I actually see that the defendant was flagged as an uncooperative. Why am I showing you this? Because my next slide is actually to show you very quickly how this data quality ecosystem works in Glaut. And you've now seen an example of the real-time agent that detects low quality responses. So in real time, we can flag respondents that are not really engaged and remove them from our data collection. Why am I saying this? Because in static surveys, this is not always possible, right? And since both the projects we are presenting today had a comparison with a static survey in different platforms, actually, but still, the sample collected in Glaut, so with AIMI, ensured 0% gibberish responses. You simply don't close the field until you reach your full sample size of fully, focused responses. On the other side, there was 10% rate in Mannheim study and a 6% rate in the human highway study. That's the other study. Of course, there are other ways you can use to ensure data quality. For instance, you can force voice-only responses. You're sure you're speaking to you're collecting with respondent responses from real people if they speak. And so Glaut ensures overall high quality during the data collection in different modes. But let's jump to the program and especially to the projects. Okay, so our program really tries to cover AIMIs and the benchmarking of this methodology from different angles. Today, we are focusing on the static surveys comparison. So two main projects were concluded here. We are also investigating human moderation. We have one completed project that was conducted by Curtin University in Australia. We are hosting a webinar on this one in a couple of weeks. So don't miss it because the professor and the researcher who led the study will join us. So if you're interested, you're very welcome to register to that as well. We are also trying to understand what happens within AIMIs. So not just comparing AIMI to traditional methodologies like surveys and human moderation, but really what happens between different use cases, between respondents types. For instance, we have a study that was the last one published by Responsive Research comparing qual respondents to panelists on the same AIMI. Then we are also interested, of course, in understanding differences between modalities. So how people answer via voice, via text. Okay. So the program is really open to independent partners who want to test AIMIs as a new methodology and come to us with interesting research questions so that we can build knowledge around this new methodology and ultimately share it with you, share it with the industry, right? So what do we know so far when it comes to AIMIs and static survey? We actually did a first comparative study, a pre-test, I could call it, back in 2024, comparing a static survey and an AIMI. The questions were the same. Simply one was AI moderated, the other group was static, so traditional survey. What we have seen is very positive already, many more words used in follow-up in AIMI compared to static surveys, half of the gibberish responses rate actually compared to that static survey, that specific one, and a much higher completion rate. However, so the main point is AIMIs add questions at the very end, right? So these follow-ups are indeed new questions. So we are giving respondents more chance to answer, more time to speak, more time to write. So these results could have been driven simply by a room effect, by the fact that they have more space, more time. So that's the answer, the question that's being trying to answer from Mannheim and Human Highway. The University of Mannheim, we had a student from the chair of quantitative marketing running a study running a first study. And then Human Highway is a market research agency in Italy. So we also have different samples. They both run these studies to compare static surveys to AIMIs, but adding follow-up questions to static surveys. So the point is now keeping the time, the room respondents have for answering fixed, so fair, having the possibility to have a fair comparison. We can really figure out what happens if it's the moderation, if it's the conversationality of the moderation that drags verbosity and all the elements. So the design was very similar. However, a few important differences to mention. The static survey for Mannheim only used text responses and used predefined follow-ups. That means that always the same. Main key question, like one of those you've seen earlier in the quick demo. And then, can you tell me something more? Can you give me some examples? These are follow-ups to the key question, but they are static. They don't change between respondents. On the other side, we have a Human Highway that tried to customize these follow-ups, adding piping. In survey programming, it's very typical to use piping of previous responses. That's nothing new. It's a tool that's been existing for a while now. So they, in a sense, customized the follow-ups. So respondents were reminded what they answered about, but it wasn't really dynamic. It wasn't really conversational. It was a little bit static as the tool itself. We have differences in sample size, of course. Since the sample size in Human Highway was big enough, then they were also able to do a comparison between vocal and textual responses. This wasn't possible instead here. What were the metrics that they measured and they compared? Verbosity, first, that's simply the number of words that are used by respondents. The number of unique words, that means cleaning the repetitions out mostly. And then lexical diversity, that Mannheim computed as the ratio between these two measurements, while Human Highway computed it as the number of lemmas. Lemmas are the root, the base canonical form of a word. So they basically show that if there is, for instance, go, goes, and went, that sums up to one distinct lemma. Okay. The lead researcher from Human Highway is a very qualitative oriented researcher. So she came up with 3 metrics, qualitative metrics that she computed herself. Semantic richness, so counting the concepts, basically the distinct concepts emerging from the text. Semantic cohesion is the second measure, how much the statements are integrated, are coherent, and they're not simply a list of words. And argumentative depth, so the degree of reasoning, basically how much people dive deep in their argumentations, how much they use narrative structures. That's for the linguistic metrics. Then they compared the content. They looked at the content of the answers of respondents, performing thematic analysis, and of course, measured participants' experience. This is something that's very important to understand as well. Let's look at the results. In Mannheim, we already see that even if the static survey had 2 follow-ups, static follow-up, AIMI had 2 dynamic follow-ups, still verbosity is higher. Okay, so 39% longer responses. The use of the vocabulary was also richer, so many more unique words. And of course, the ratio between these two is also positively skewed towards AIMIs. So the words used were more differentiated. So already from the first experiment, we can see that even if we give respondents the same time to answer, the same possibility to articulate their answer, static follow-ups don't do the trick. In Human Highway, we find very similar results. So more verbosity, more lexical diversity, more concepts expressed. When you look at the pink bars, that's the overall responses, both text and voice. When you zoom in the vocal responses, you see that these metrics really skyrocket. So when people speak, they use even more words. They use a much more differentiated set of words. They express more concepts. They also go much deeper in their argumentation, and they use statements that are more cohesive, more connected. So we see that even if there is a sort of customization of these follow-ups, but that's not dynamic, that's not conversational, it's not enough to match the quality you get with dynamic conversational follow-ups. Then they both looked at themes, what happens in the respondents' answers. In Glaut, of course, we can perform thematic analysis of the open-ended questions, but they did outside Glaut because, of course, they had to compare two groups of respondents, one collected in Glaut, one collected in the other software used. So they run this thematic analysis both using ChatGPT. Both see that the set of themes is not really different between the groups. So the topics emerging in content are actually the same. But in Mannheim, the researchers saw that responses to AIMIs covered more unique themes. That means respondents in AIMI told more different things. So they were expressing more concepts, more different unique concepts. Again, a qualitative analysis from Human Highway shows that the themes, the responses emerging from AIMIs include much more contextual details, many more concrete examples compared to static surveys. The final set of results is about participants' experience. Both studies asked respondents about their experience using slightly different items. It was easy to express my thoughts. I was comfortable sharing personal thoughts. We see that overall, across both studies and across all items, the experience is better with AIMI compared to static surveys. In Human Highway, the comparison between overall responses and voice responses doesn't show too much difference. So it's not that vocal is providing a much better experience compared to text. It's really the AIMI itself, both text and voice, that provides a better experience. So to wrap up, why should we care about these results? Why I think we should care about these results and why I was very interested in reading them in firsthand. You really see that it's not the duration of static survey that gives you deeper results. It's really the conversationality. People feel part of a conversation, they feel part of a dynamic, and they express more. This is especially true when they respond with using their voice, but even if they just write, they will disclose much more compared to a static version. So really, to wrap up, AIMI is not just something that you can, it's a new methodology. It's really a bridge between quant and qual. And I think these two projects already, these two first projects published about static surveys and AIMIs, show that you can dive deeper into respondents' answers if you add some AI moderation. Of course, these studies have some limitations. There's just two topics investigated. We have a sample from the US, a sample from Italy. Both, of course, come from panel respondents. And we, rely on experiential metrics. So we ask respondents how they felt about AIMIs. The study from Curtin University will actually show metrics that are collected from biometrics, so body responses to AIMIs, which is much more interesting than just self-reported. Anyways, we can discuss about other limitations, but I would really like to get your feedback now on the results you've seen, and especially I would really like to ask what other research questions could be interesting for you. And yeah, if you got some answers to maybe questions you had when you registered to the webinar. I don't know if there was any question posted in the chat.
Not yet, Vero.
Yet? Okay.
No.
Does anybody want to speak up and make this session a little more interactive?
Hi, Veronica. It's Yana from Czech Republic. I had a question about the button for report. I'm still waiting for the report.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Can we talk about this in a separate?
Oh, yes, we can.
Yeah.
I'll go separate, but okay.
Sure.
There is any question related to the studies? I mean, yeah, to the two studies, or if there is any other research question you'd like to see results in real research settings.
Hi there, it's Mike from UK, London.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, the health survey in particular, where you were asking about exercise. I know you used the word try when you talked about what you do. You try to do this, and the response you had on the screen was talking about eating vegetables and exercising 3. We often find we know what we like to do compared to what we really do. Can you use the platform to dig deeper into what reality is? So even when people say, eat a healthy diet, can you get the platform to kind of probe further to find out how healthy that really is?
Absolutely. I mean, of course, it's all, respondents' feedback. We can't really track what they do. It will be very nice to run a study to compare what they do compared to what they say. But the probing that I've shown you how to actually program the right probing follows the directions that you want. So in this case, for sake of comparison, we have to limit somehow the depth of this moderation so that we have 2 follow-ups in AIMIs, 2 follow-ups in the static survey. But you can let that free, so dive deeper and especially address it to, in this case, for instance, real behavior. Or, can you give me the agenda of what you're doing day by day? This is something you can absolutely do. It really depends on how you prompt the AI, how much depth you can get.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Someone else wants to speak up? No, maybe Vero, since we're short in time, we can finish the session here.
Of course. I hope you are going home with some answers to questions you may have had before. And really, I invite you to register to our next webinar, which is going to happen on May 26th. Maybe we can share a link here as well, Ella, if you have it.
That's right away.
It's not going to be just myself, so you'll see other people speaking as well. Maybe that will make the interaction more interactive. So Professor Billy Sung and Patrick Wong from Australia, from Curtin University, they will explain how they conducted their experiment with biometrics. So measuring respondents' physical reactions to an AI moderated interview, facial expression, heart rate, and skin conductance. There you go. You see the link here. Really hope to see you there. There is a question here.
Yes, we have to shoot now.
How do you ensure responses consistently and reduce variability in AIMIs compared to traditional one, especially when it is related to decision making? You mean variability in responses or in prompting? Because we want responses to be, diverse, to get different depth in responses. Okay, so the main point in AIMIs is to have those nuances, those differentiated answers that you can't really get through traditional methodologies with closed questions, right? Those questions allow you consistency in answers. You have a battery of 5 options. You can simply count what's the option that's been chosen more often. However, many times you don't know why people chose that option, right? So in responses, you really try to get that depth. So actually, if you want to see variability in responses and then analyze the themes, what happens in between. You can, though, direct the follow-ups in the direction that you're interested in. So let's say you're asking respondents to rate experience in a store that they went to, but you really want them to focus on cleanliness of the environment and on the service. So you can prompt the follow-ups to dive deeper into those two dimensions. But the goal would be to get varied responses on those two dimensions. I don't know if that was clear. Any other question? Feel free to speak up.
It's not a huge goal.
Okay. If not, thank you very much for your time. We won't steal more of your time. I really hope to see you soon again. Feel free to get in touch, and you'll receive the slides of the presentation for reference. Feel free to get in touch at any time if you have questions, and especially if you have research questions that would like to be answered by our program. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.